This is Master Obi-Wan Kenobi. I regret to report that both our Jedi Order and the Republic have fallen. Our future is uncertain. But in time, a new hope will emerge.
Coffee with Kenobi presents Rebels Reactions with Dan Z and Corey Club.
All troopers, focus your fire on the Jedi.
Come with us. Learn what it truly means to be a Jedi.
I'm in space. And I'm about to die.
We need an opening. Found one.
What did he say?
He said hello, hyperspace. Oh, and guess what? This is the podcast you're looking for.
This is Adam Watson of Star Wars in the Classroom, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z and Corey Club. This is the podcast you're looking for.
Welcome to Rebels Reactions, where Coffee with Kenobi examines Star Wars Rebels through a critical lens. On today's show, we will be discussing Out of Darkness, the 5th episode in Season 1. Joining us for Rebels Reactions is Adam Watson of Star Wars in the Classroom. Adam is known as Rogue One, and his curriculum has earned numerous praise and accolades among his fellow educators, Quirk Books, and Ian Desher himself. Welcome, Adam.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for agreeing to be on Coffee with Kenobi. Why don't you tell the listeners sort of a little bit about your background and how you came to Coffee with Kenobi?
I'll try to be brief. As a high school English teacher, I can be verbose, but I'm going to try to give you the 2-minute version at least. I'm a high school English teacher that I was in the classroom for 9 years until very recently. And now I'm a district technology integration coach for Shelby County Schools. It's a public school system just east of Louisville in Kentucky. So that means that now I do a teaching with teachers. I kind of coach them on how to use education technology. So I'm really excited about that. But in terms of the steps of leading me up to Ian and now you guys, let's see. It's probably been about a year ago now. I was in a bookstore with my oldest daughter, and I looked down and I saw the William Shakespeare Star Wars book, which I just thought, well, that's a hoot. And to be honest, and I've said this before in other places, I didn't really have high expectations. I thought that's such a clever hook, but who's really going to take the time to do a book like that well? Because it almost sells itself. It's Shakespeare. If you love Shakespeare, you love Star Wars, put them together. But I read it and I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. It went straight, as I'm reading it, it's, your teacher neurons are firing. You're thinking, what are all the different ways that I can use this in a classroom with students? And in my previous district, there was a yearly annual grant opportunity that you could apply for a grant. So immediately I started thinking, okay, if I could get a couple of class sets of the William Shakespeare Star Wars book in my classroom, we could talk, on core content standards, I should add, things like how authors transform text. Here's an author, Ian Desher, that's taking William Shakespeare, transforming this text of Star Wars, looking back and forth across multimedia, looking at the Star Wars original movie, looking at the William Shakespeare Star Wars book. And with all those things, basically I created an academic unit around it. And how it expanded and went even further than that is that early in the process, as I was still writing the grant, hoping to get it, I just reached out. I figured the worst that he could say is no or just ignore me. But I reached out through Ian, through the internet, and got his email, emailed him and said, hey, I'm a class teacher. I'm thinking about doing this unit with my freshman English students. Is it possible that maybe we could Skype at the end of the unit? I think that would be really powerful. And he was gracious and kind enough to say, sure. So at the end of the unit, that's what we did. When I was getting near the end of the unit, though, as a teacher, I developed all these day-to-day lesson plan 1, 2, day 3, day 5, some, worksheets and handouts. And when I was creating all these resources, I thought to myself, gosh, this is a lot of stuff. I'd love to be able to share it. But at that point in time, I didn't have really a website presence or anything like that where I could house it. So once again, through the internet, it was really probably, I think, just a Google search. I came across Star Wars in the Classroom. and contacted those guys and said, "Hey, I'm a teacher," said the story. Is there any way that maybe you have some space? I can throw a few of these documents up or something. And again, very kind and very gracious. That's the lovely thing about education in Star Wars. I think, teachers want to help teachers, and Star Wars fans, we bond together. So they said, yes, we'd love that. In fact, we're about to start this initiative called the Rogue Initiative to band together all these Star Wars minded educators. And so this would be a great kickoff of that. So I'm proud to say, gentlemen, that I am Rogue One of the Star Wars in the Classroom Rogue Initiative. So I'll put that on the tombstone somewhere. But anyway, I put up the materials, and that's how I, came across you guys. You all, being contributors as well to the Star Wars education experience. Quirk Books, the publisher of the William Shakespeare Star Wars trilogy there. Through some back and forth emails there, they were very excited. They've shared, some of the materials. They even had, at a later point, they put a little website presence that kind of mirrored an archive of the Star Wars curriculum that I created. So it's been a wild ride. And again, at the end of it, as Ian promised, he did a Skype with my classroom, and it was awesome. What can I say? So that was probably longer than 2 minutes. I apologize, but that's the journey.
Well, that's all right.
It didn't take 9 episodes, but it did take a couple of minutes. So there you go.
That's great. Yeah, and Ian is, you'll never hear us say anything but wonderful things about Ian because he's a great guy and very accommodating, and as are you, my friend. So we are excited to have you join us for this special Rebels Reactions, and we're going to talk about Out of Darkness. Mm-hmm. And let's just start, gentlemen. Corey, why don't you start? Tell me your overall opinions of Out of Darkness.
Well, this is the quintessential episode of the female leads here. We've all been waiting for this, them to kind of come out of their own into their light and kind of show us their bag of tricks. And
I see what you did there with the into the light.
We'll get to that later.
Yes.
Yeah. But definitely this is centered on Sabine and Hera, and it was very cool to see them on the center light as far as kind of showing what they can do as far as Hera and outside the ship. We've talked about numerous times of her just kind of being in the ship. Now she's outside the ship and running a quick mission, and Sabine tags along. It's full of action, danger, comedy. So there's every little bit of pieces to it. But I think overall, it was a little bit of a letdown for me. But I think we'll get into that more later on. Okay,
Adam, what about you?
I liked it, and like Corey was saying, as far as the two leads, it was especially Hera. I'm a big Twi'lek fan. I like the Twi'leks. The whole idea of with Hera, she instantly kind of became a favorite of mine anyway. But it seems like she was kind of getting, if I may make a little bit of an analogy, it was feeling like she was kind of being put in a Hera space. If I want to make a Star Trek reference, I know this is a Star Wars podcast, but
we'll allow it.
All hailing frequencies open. I felt like she was just like she steered the ship, and that's all I got to see her in. So I was really excited to see her, kind of have a, as you all were saying, an out of the ship experience. I enjoyed the episode. I thought it was good. It, if anything, kind of established more of who Hera was. So that was a good thing. I will say something just on a little cinematic thing. One thing that I really liked about Star Wars Rebels from the very beginning is its look. And some of the times, that I really loved in this particular episode was this kind of the cinematography, if you will, like the dark moments when, blasters are being fired and the only light you're seeing is the red of the rays as far as illumination. If I can be, all artsy about things for a moment, that to me, there was some painterly scenes about that was just different. It's just something that I hadn't seen before, at least in this particular incarnation of a Star Wars cartoon. So I enjoyed that.
True. Very good. I'm sort of mixed on this one. I've been waiting, of course. Anyone who's been listening to Rebels Reaction since the beginning has heard me complain ad nauseum about wanting to see more Hera and hoping to see more of her character fleshed out. I'm still not convinced that I got that after Out of Darkness.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that a little bit more. I'm glad to see that the two of you kind of feel similarly about it. I'm interested even to know what my grade's going to be at the end, because I was looking forward to discussing it with you two gentlemen, because I wanted to see how your rhetoric would shape my thoughts. Hera talked at the beginning about someone named Fulcrum. which made me laugh because of the show Chuck. That was a big part of the show Chuck. But she says, Fulcrum's intel is on a need-to-know basis. And then Sabine says, and she kind of looks off to the side, and I told you before, I need to know more. So we get this close-up of Sabine and her reflection. And I was happy to see that because it told me, all right, finally, Sabine isn't someone who just blows things up and paints, and she's clever with the quips. We're going to see more about her. This is going to be a Sabine-centered episode. From that regard, it did not disappoint at all. And I did bother to look up the technical definition of fulcrum just for fun, and it is the support or point of rest on which a lever turns in moving a body. So fulcrum is, taking the ghost's mission and pointing them in a certain direction. But we open up all these interesting concepts here, the dynamics of these two, and we're seeing some tension that is replete throughout the episode. And Adam, what were your overall thoughts on this whole notion of fulcrum and Hera and Sabine's conversation, just at the very beginning?
Well, as the world turns, like the soap opera, right? I think one of the things is that, granted the configuration of the episodes in general, and this one in particular, is, you're going to have some action, you're going to move things along, but you're hoping, since they are building and making some back references, that you're building on those layers. And that's one thing that I don't know if that could be a whole entire episode down the way or a moment of revelation, but I'm kind of like what you all are saying. It's kind of like, from Ezra, through his eyes, we've joined this crew and we're running around with them. But I have tons of questions, some of which you've all brought up in previous podcasts and talked about. It's like that whole thing of where they're going, where the fate of this crew, because you don't see them in the Star Wars original trilogy, unless Lucas added them somewhere in the corner, and I missed that and somewhere in a re-release or something. So you're thinking to yourself, where do they fit in the bigger picture, or are they just a marginal side? I mean, again, it's questions now more than answers that I have.
Right, Corey. What about you?
Well, I'll start off to, just the title of the episode was Out of Darkness, which makes me think back to the Star Trek sequel Into Darkness. I don't know if there's a relation there.
Star Trek references.
I know, that's weird. I don't know what's happening to this podcast.
I'm ruining it.
No, not by any means. No.
You're
good,
enhancing.
Yeah, all in good fun. And, I think the Out of Darkness feel is, you think about this, we have all these questions. Where did the Rebel team come from? How long have we working together? And now we're just getting these little trickles of thought. And between this conversation we have here, we are coming out of the darkness. We get to see a little bit of Sabine's background. We get to see how Hera gets to interact with her on a one-on-one basis. And especially with this conversation they have, there's a definite tension there. Like, this has been brought up before. This is something that Sabine is looking to get a larger part of the group. She wants to really play her role. And, as far as a fulcrum and that analogy you had earlier, as far as it levering into the body of the movement, if you will, of the working parts, I hope this is it. I hope this is that pitch into a big arc, and that's really going to, knock our socks off. Because I thought it was kind of weak in a sense, but I like this conversation. This was a strong point, I think, in this episode, because it's something we haven't seen before, but also gave us a lot of good background as far as the characters.
Well, it's the hook. Like I said, when she looks in there, like her inner reflection as she's reflecting kind of out the window, out of her peripheral, I thought finally we're going to get some quality out of what makes her tick. And I think that it delivered very much on that level. Hera
if I could interject real quick.
Sure.
One thing that, and it may be one of you are about to mention, but there's a little bit of that depth that I appreciate that I've seen in a couple of moments throughout the series so far. There's an interesting concept there, and I think Sabine kind of brings that up, which is the idea of, we are fleeing from the Empire, which is, secret within secrets, darkness. There's the darkness metaphor again, being in the shadows and so on. If the rebel and the rebellion stands for anything, it should probably be dragging us out into the light and standing for truth and all those things. And yet there's a tension between that and the need for secrecy. Obviously, the ship is the ghost, right? So it exists, but it doesn't exist. It's kind of, the visibility, metaphor continuing. Mm-hmm. So to me, there's that entrancy tension that Sabine brings up, which is the idea of, look, I'm not working for the Empire. I'm working for something that matters more to me, where I want to, know who I'm working for. I don't, I want to know that I'm doing the right thing, that, what if in the end, I think I'm working for the right intelligence, but, I'm on the wrong side. I mean, that's pretty big questions. I mean, that's modern questions really that we're grappling with today in today's society is, when is secret okay and when secret not okay?
Right. I agree. And that's something we're going to dive into, especially later as we get to hear more of their heart-to-hearts on their little journey. And speaking of heart-to-hearts, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm really enjoying the burgeoning growth. I keep throwing the word burgeoning because Craig Dickinson and I have a joke that we both use that word too much. But Kanan and Hera's bond, I'm starting to really enjoy it. I didn't dislike it before. I was sort of ambivalent. And now I really like it. I like the kind of winks they have towards one another with their tone and the way they riff off of one another. I like how Hera is very relaxed. And she's always relaxed. She's very comfortable, but especially around Kanan, they just bring out a very unique. It's like an honest, playful side that doesn't become silly or mawkish. What did you guys notice about their bond?
Yes. First off, Dan, you mentioned, I think early on, that you're of the mind of the will they won't they idea, and we got that.
I didn't want it. Yeah.
Well, you didn't want that. Yeah, we got that kind of checked off our list as far as when we had Freddie Prinze Jr. on. He's saying, they have a relationship and it's there, and that I think that shows in the writing and their characters. And every time I see them in a scene, she's saying sweets or honey or something like that. So there's terms of endearment there. They obviously have a relationship that goes further than just teammates. I'm enjoying that as well. I'm enjoying their counterparts as far as the quote unquote mom and dad of the group, and they don't let it get too gushy at times, but they love it just right. So I think that has to do with the writing and just as characters they are. They're not bouncing or jumping around this idea of, are they going to get together or not. So I'm glad I can look past that and still enjoy it for what it is.
Well, yeah, there's love and there's admiration there, but whether they're currently dating or whatever, it doesn't seem really that important because they have missions and they're trying to save lives and they're trying to go against this incredible juggernaut that swoops in and takes over planets and families and destroys lives. There's more that they're fighting for, and to me that's real love and sacrifice because you put others' needs before your own. They're handling it very well. Adam, what are you noticing about it?
Well, two things, I guess. One is that it's nice to see a functional, comfortable relationship, and I think that was a smart move on the writer's part as far as doing something a little different. You could have had the quip, will they or won't they, Han Leia dynamic, but that's not going on. You could, of course, had the tortured, tragic, it's going to all turn out badly, Anakin Padme thing. They're not doing that either. So with this, it's something where it's just a given that they're functioning, they're fine, they're healthy. You sense history. And I do appreciate that because one of the things that even in these small, slight moments, that's pretty good that you can feel like, okay, from those two, you really do feel like they have a sense of history together. And that gives, at least a suggested backstory that maybe be explored at some point further down the road. The thing that I think that I keep coming back to, and I'm not trying to, be on point. It's just asking the question. I've always been really, really confused about the whole Jedi should or shouldn't have, a romantic partner or not.
Right.
There's obviously the whole idea is that Jedi should not have any attachments. Look what Anakin did. He had an attachment and look how that went. Ironically, with Luke, he ultimately doesn't have a romantic partner, but I always thought it was very clever if it was subtext or maybe supposed to be more on the nose. It's sometimes hard to see or say, but that Luke, defies Yoda, defies the rule and wisdom of Kenobi and Yoda, and that's ultimately the right thing. He says, you know what, I'm not going to destroy my father. I can redeem him, the one choice that nobody said he should do, and he was right. So I go back to my point, I guess. I'm trying to kind of figure out with Kanan, son sees Jedi currently, or ex-Jedi, or hidden Jedi, or whichever way you want to look at it as far as his status. If we could look into his Facebook page, I guess we could find out. But the status update of Kanan. But Kanan, as far as, that to me opens up that question. Now, granted, he's hiding, but does he just independently choose that that's the part of his training and all that, you know what, I can let that go and it's okay. I can still be just as good of a Jedi without, because I have an attachment, because that's a big, I obviously you see that there's care and concern and a relationship between them. So there's a big attachment. That's not exactly, the Jedi way, but, or maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I'm curious what you all think about that.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any such thing as reading too much into it because I think there's a lot that's going on there. Corey, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of explained it as we talked about this before when we first kind of started this series as far as the Jedi path as it is now in this dark times. And it seems to be a toss-up, I think. It seems to be, Kanan doesn't have somebody he's training from, so he has to kind of make it up as he goes along, which is, something that's, I think, hard for him to do, but also on the other side of the coin, that it's a relief to him. He doesn't have these constraints. He doesn't have a Jedi Council looking down on him and watching his every moves. He's got friends. He's got family, and he seems to put them first. And look out for them. I think so. I think it's that road. It's that road to that new Jedi path that obviously that Luke discovers through his own learnings and
Sure.
things. And, like we talked about before, Dan, I think that, it's the attachments are always going to be there, regardless of, if they're supposed to have them or not. So it's, it's something I think that is good for Kanan at this point. And, it's always, as a storyteller tells a story, they always say, what's the hardest thing that can be taken away from the hero is what's they're going after. And to build this relationship as it is now, and down the line, down the series, as we go on, will there be a breakup there? Will someone get captured or something like that to really wreak havoc on something that's we know right now is solid and firm? So I'm interested to find out where it's going to go, and how they're going to break it up. Go ahead.
I am too. Don't you love that we have no idea?
Yes,
that's the fun of it for me. The ambiguity in this spoiler choking culture that we marinate in our daily Twitter lives. It's really nice to not know what's going on.
Can I add to that? Because
sure.
I think that's something that is so refreshing that I've almost forgotten, which is, again, another tangent. We'll keep spiraling away from Star Wars, but I'm a huge fan of the superhero movies. I was a Marvel kid in particular, although I've read both my share of Marvel and DC comic books. And what a joy it is to be in a world where the special effects and the budget and the culture has gotten to the point where, these movies I would have dreamed of as a 12-year-old are now coming out. But there's also a small part of me that's a little bit of a letdown because, when they talk about, the next major arc, they're going to do this, that, and the other thing. Well, I've read the comic books and I pretty much 80 or 90% know what's going to happen. With the prequels, there was a bit of that. Like, you kind of were curious about some of the steps along the way, but you ultimately knew by the end of episode 3, Anakin's going to become Darth Vader. That really wasn't a surprise. And again, an interesting parallel here, because not only do you have Star Wars Rebels, where it's like, wow, if these guys, we assume, have some kind of significance to play, and they say now that these are going to be canon, so we wonder how that may be setting up these small little gems and nuggets that are actually going to play out in the movies later. Both in the cartoon, the Star Wars Rebels series, and in episode 7, 8, 9, we're back in uncharted territory. There's no comic book that came out. We're not following an expanded universe novel. We really don't know what's going to happen. And I love that. I mean, that brings back to the whole thing of, at the end of Empire, it's like, oh my goodness, Han, is he going to die? Are they going to find him? I mean, you really don't know. And that's great. I love that.
It is great. It's adding to the power of the narrative. Speaking of the narrative, one of the things I'm enjoying so much about Rebels is that while we're seeing these characters grow and we're learning more about them and learning more about the Star Wars universe, we're seeing a lot of metaphors sprinkled in, and I really noticed them a lot in this particular episode. Even though I'm up and down on it, I love the metaphors, and I want to bring out two elements. One's a popular motif in just about ever since the first story ever told. One not as much. So let's look at both light as a metaphor and gasoline as a metaphor.
Okay.
Yes. I'll just start on this one. For me, the light one, I think the first time I watched it, I noticed it, but I didn't process it the way that I did the second time I looked through it with my Coffee with Kenobi eyes. And I, of course, you've got these creatures, these demonic creatures that don't even speak. They don't have voice. They just have growling, and they have claws, and they have teeth, and the spooky eyes. Very reminiscent. The eyes reminded me a lot of General Grievous, the animated Grievous, I thought. But then the light is there, and then when the light is covered up, darkness envelops the land, and evil can run and make chaos. So they have to wait for light to come out for there to be peace, there to be moments of reflection, for there to be moments of knowledge, because then they can make a plan. So I love the light metaphor, and it's of course heavily Christian based. It reminds me so much of even things like Beowulf when Grendel's mother is killed, which we've talked about before. Light is a very popular motif in literature and good storytelling. We see a lot of that. So let's talk. Is there anything else that I left out about light that you want to talk about, either of you gentlemen, before we move on to gasoline?
Yeah, it's definitely a heavy theme in this, and then even in the entire Star Wars saga. I mean, there's always these light and dark moments, and we see it in every. And I'm just thinking about the Empire Strikes Back lightsaber battle scene on Cloud City. Just the light used there, and the things, and the revelation of him being his father. Just things like the ups and downs, and it just seems to be an ongoing theme, and especially in this episode, it shows that. There is still darkness outside the Empire, too. Still looking to make trouble for our heroes, and so I think it's going to be constantly ongoing thing as this series goes along.
All good points. I thought that on just a construction level for just a second, I thought it was really interesting about the whole. This wasn't a thing where we have to hunker down before, and see if we can survive the night. I love the idea that there was the asteroid that if it, a big enough one passed in front of the sun, you'd be out of luck for 10 minutes, and then maybe you'd have, 8 minutes apiece or something like that. That was a little interesting way to mix it up.
I love it. It's like there's the idea there. To me, the asteroid represents time, and time can impact light and dark, which I really liked.
Agreed. I don't know. I keep one of the things about light in general that I keep thinking about and trying to rack my brain. I taught a myth and legends class for several years as a high school teacher until last year when I switched positions. And I'd like to think, and I'm sure that they're not throwing out names randomly. To call her Hera is an interesting choice to me, in the Greek mythology of it. And again, I know you all have touched on that at some, I think, but it's. But of course, in this version, Hera is pretty much a heroine. I mean, she's as opposed to most of Greek mythology, where Hera was the bad character, or the witch, or the one that was getting after Zeus all the time, kind of thing. But yeah, as far as the light, to me, I think it's just the attitude of maybe even with Sabine, and we're talking about the asteroid thing, is that sometimes things seem to be hunky dory. But almost randomly, the darkness settles in, and that makes her furrow her brow and kind of think to herself, what am I getting myself into, and what's the real truth behind this? And this is the first time that I've asked this question, kind of thing. So, I kind of saw that, and their conflict together as far as battling those demons in the dark, which are interestingly devoid of personality. I mean, they're just kind of like nightmarish, like you said. They're not creatures that you feel like any kind of sympathy for, any kind of they have any kind of personality or anything like that. So anyway, I'm sorry, that was my 2 cents worth.
Well, no, it's true. And one of the things that I don't know if some of our listeners have realized, when we record these shows, we always record them after they premiere on the Disney XD app. And so then when people get to see them broadcast on Disney XD on actual broadcast television, one of the great things about watching the show is you can watch Rebels Recon on StarWars.com, and it will tell you a lot of the behind-the-scenes things, and it will reveal names and connections to some of the things that we may or may not miss. And it also shows on StarWars.com some of the trivia and points of the episode that we don't get to see. So at the time of this recording, we don't know what the names of these characters are. It'll be interesting to see. I would love it if they didn't have names, although I doubt that's the case. Everything has names in Star Wars. Naming is important, and it sells action figures too.
Right.
But I think just the mystery of them, they're sort of like miniature nightmares. So let's talk about gasoline as a metaphor, which maybe at first blush we wouldn't necessarily catch that. But I think there's a very strong metaphor for gasoline. And Adam, I noticed when I mentioned that earlier, you had a reaction which intrigued me. Tell me what you think when you process that notion.
Well, first off, again, the construction episode, we have the thing where, it's overlooked as a flaw in the ship, and therefore stranding them on the planet. So that's the plot device part of it.
The MacGuffin.
The MacGuffin, if you will. Absolutely. I sort of saw the gas, especially the shot where it's revealed, where it's seeping out. One thing that I thought that was intriguing about it is that, and maybe it was me, or maybe I was being slow on the uptake, but it seemed to be framed in such a way that there was a very interesting ambiguity with it almost. There was almost something where it was like, is this some kind of slime creature that crawled underneath? I mean, I was thinking of things.
No, I agree.
I guess I'm thinking to myself, this is a spaceship. It has gasoline, you know what I'm saying? Is it coolant that's leaking out? What's going on? And I see, to me, there's the feeling, in the edges, I think, of the episodes, what is the Inquisitor or whatever, is the idea of, the truth seeping out, the reality seeping out, the hidden danger, that was a few of the things that came to mind, I think, with that. But it was a really interesting, again, even as it was framed, I thought it was just kind of an interesting image of seeing that creep underneath the ship.
Sure. I like that. Corey, what about you?
Yeah, I saw this in our notes here. And I thought, what could he possibly mean? No, yeah. When I got thinking about it as you guys were talking, and I thought, to me, it seemed like it was like an hourglass. It's just as time ticking down to
stands running out.
Yeah, time's running out, stands running out, to where it's something's going to happen. Obviously, it's kind of it's a plot device, like you said, Adam. It's something that I don't know if it's enlighten us, Dan, please.
No, I like the idea. I like what you're talking about with the time. To me, the gasoline. The reason there even is a gas leak is because the Three Stooges, Ezra and Zeb and Chopper, are having fun. And how could you not have a little bit of fun? You're cooped up in a ship most of the time. You're on the run. You're trying to do some good against the mighty Empire. So you're bound to have moments, and they're very much like the renegades, the brothers and sisters. I guess they're all brothers, I suppose. I don't know if droids have a gender per se, but they get into these situations, and goofing around and immaturity causes chaos, right? Mm-hmm. So you take something that can be good, a family unit and a connection, and with just the right amount of tinkering or goofing around, you have something that can be explosive. You have things that can be dangerous, and it manifests itself as gasoline because of them goofing around and not cooperating as a family unit, following orders. It's very much like the classic archetype of children's literature where, the parents make you follow the orders and they can be strict and their sticks in the mud, and usually the kids are smarter, but in this case, they are not, which I find pretty interesting in a series that's aimed primarily at younger audiences, although they probably don't necessarily notice the gasoline metaphor, but maybe they do. So then, because of these problems, there's a leak. It puts them in danger, and it's explosive. And I also think that the gasoline metaphor can be stretched to Sabine, because here's someone who is clearly powerful. She's dangerous to the Empire, and she maybe is dangerous to herself if she lets herself go to that dark place where she thinks about being in the Imperial Academy, and she mentions the horrors that she witnessed and experiences. And Hera is very much someone that she leans on, that she looks to. Talk about Hera as Mother Earth. She's the mother of the ship. She's like a big sister more to Sabine. There's all kinds of familial things going on here, though. So I think that their relationship is going to be maybe more important than what Kanan and Hera are about in their connection, because this is where it could be explosive down the road if not properly funneled. How'd I do?
I like it. That's good.
And I thought funnel was perfect, right? Gasoline.
Yes. Yeah. I like it.
So Kanan talks about, speaking of gasoline and things that can be dangerous, Kanan says it's Hera's job to create problems for the Empire and to create profits for us. And Corey and I were talking about this a little bit before we started taping. What exactly is the end game? Is it just to cause little tiny headaches where the Empire can just take a Band-Aid and fix it. I mean, it's way too early to know what their end result is. I mean, obviously this leads to the start of the rebellion, so we know it's not going to be for naught. It's going to be really important. But I think it would be very intimidating to continue to fight and just throw rocks against the Empire. And sometimes it seems like that's all they're doing.
Yeah, mentioning that, I think that's interesting because to me, and this goes back to Spark Rebellion, I think, as far as, the dramatic music, the upsweep of the camera and making a dramatic choice there for Ken. To me, I feel like he's kind of pilfering around the edges a little bit. I think there is a feeling, that right now they're able to kind of make these choices where they're making these little pinpricks against the Empire as far as, we stole a cache of weapons or something like that. And, we blew up a TIE fighter or two or something like that. There's, in one level, like you said, I think it is setting up a little bit of the idea of, how huge that underdog, like the opening shot of the first movie, the little bitty rebellion, it's almost, hardly significant, the growing into, the seed that it grows into as far as to take down the entire Empire. But I think it kind of feels a little bit, I feel from his character anyway, at least this is my opinion, that he's comfortable and he's able to right now straddle that fence. I feel like in the future, maybe in a few seasons from now, continuing that long, but at some point he's really going to have to make a hard choice that, for the greater good or for the nobility of it, or as a sacrifice perhaps for all the things that are going to happen that we know are going to happen in the original trilogy and so on, he's going to have to decide, even though it may be, the one TIE fighter, the one Star Destroyer, whatever it might be, or the Inquisitor himself, that he can't, run around and just do these little jobs. He's going to have to make, truly stand against the Empire for all it is. And it may be that he'll lose. And what a tragic choice that would be, but, for the greater nobility of the heroism of it. Because that's an interesting thing I think about the whole Jedi idea, after Order 66, is that, I think there's that feeling, you see that with this character, is that, you want to hide. That's the best thing to do. There's a self-preservation thing that probably kicks in. You're scared. You're not sure what you're going to do next and that kind of thing. From that to the moment where you're going to turn around and face the enemy and try to do something with it. That's why I thought was interesting in the episode where I thought, oh, Luminara, she's alive. It's a thing of, it was interesting to see that spark in him where it was like, he really was like, oh, we're going to get her. It didn't matter how silly or ridiculous they were going to storm into the heart of an imperial situation. That was the right thing to do for him to try to save another Jedi. And that was an interesting turn for him. It wasn't like, what's the profit in it? So I think that conflict in him, I think, is something that's going to play out later.
Right. And we actually do get to see him more like he is in A New Dawn with his little exchange. When she says, you can be so frustrating, he says, yeah, I've heard that before. And he seems to sort of enjoy it. And that seems more like the smug cavalier cowboy that we experienced in A New Dawn. So I was very happy to see that connection because it almost hasn't been there. He's done so much growth since A New Dawn, obviously. So that was fun. Corey, what about you? Anything on this one?
Yeah, as far as Kanan and him being the quote unquote mission, or I guess they kind of established Hera as being the one that establishes the missions, as the contacts and things. It was, to me, it felt like every episode they're stealing crates, they're trading crates, they're getting crates. Let's get the crates over here, move the crates over this way. Let's get the crates over, and I'm hoping that it's leading up to something that's going to be the fulcrum, of the entire, of the entire missions that they've been going. These little sporadic missions. But you made a good point, Adam, where it's kind of that fight or flight mentality where they are on the run the entire time. And I think I related it to the Battlestar Galactica, where it's just them. It's them out there doing these little missions and trying to just survive. And however they're able to do that, if it's stealing more crates, then I guess that's what it is. But
which we don't even know what's in them, which is pretty fun.
Well, I'd like to see what's. I want to make some of the connections. These empty crates, and one of them I know that the crates had a marking on it, and she said, "Oh, I'll take this one," which I'm sure we'll get into later, but.
Probably a Corey Club action figure.
That'd be awesome,
right?
That would be great. Well, here's the thing I think is interesting, which is one wonders, is Hera like that mother figure? If it's almost like she's tricking the crew into being noble. One wonders if it's something where if it makes everyone go along for the ride because they think they're making a profit, when the reality is that unbeknownst, Hera is actually setting up the small little cells, the small little movements that we hope is, like you said, instead of just pushing crates around. I love that. That was great, Corey. Besides that there's these little itsy bitsy significant moments that Hera is a part of. Now, for the safety of the crew, she's probably keeping that hidden. For all they know, they're making 100 credits or whatever at the end of the day. The bigger picture is that she carries maybe that burden of, I'm handling a bigger mission, and to have that crack open at some point, maybe in a future episode, would be great. I hope, the fulcrum thing.
Sure.
Again, that's actually what's going on, or fulcrum's a code word for maybe a character that's young, that we know from the trilogy or something. That would be a great moment.
Maybe it's an acronym for something.
It could be.
I have thoughts on that, but we'll talk later, right?
Really? Well, I mean,
Or we can talk
Adam
now.
Adam brought it up. Let's talk about trust. Hera's big selling point as far as why she's withholding information from Sabine. Sabine has a huge problem, clearly, with not having the information. The Empire did this to her. The people that are bad did this to her. And to what extent, we don't know. But Hera says, and very poignantly, and I do want to point out, she seems more vulnerable with Sabine than she does with anyone. Sabine brings out this tender, vulnerable side of her. And no one would argue that Hera isn't the leader of the crew, I'd think. I mean, even Kanan would say that. But she says, she shows her almost reverence for Kanan. He's the Jedi. He knows what's going on. And then she says to Sabine, if captured, you can't reveal what you don't know. So it's a brief monologue, but the big picture is that, do they expect that they're going to get captured? I mean, I know it's a precarious situation. There's just a couple of them against the Empire, but trust is a very important thing. Communication is a very important thing. Sabine wonders if they're going to make a difference. Are they walking into another nightmare? Literally, they walk into a miniature nightmare that's manufactured for them through this mission. She says, believe in the long-term plan. Kanan knows what he's doing. So we've got faith, we've got trust, we've got issues of communication. A lot to dissect here.
Well, here's the other side of that too, Dan, is, got revealed that that Sabine has been through the academy a little bit and seen the other side of things. So maybe the trust factor is not necessarily come full circle for Hera. She's still playing her cards close to the chest and doesn't want to give out all her secrets because, how much can I trust her? And even Ezra and even Zeb. And I feel like she says, I trust you. Basically, it's like saying, you need to trust me here because as a parent, I have to withhold this information from you. Sure.
But it's for your own good because if you get tortured, see, that's the thing. When she says, if something were to happen, you would reveal it. You can't reveal something you don't know. So that's not really protecting Sabine. That's protecting the rebels.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's again, it's interesting to see. One of the things that
it's very much war. It's so much like the Revolutionary War.
There you go. There's an historical connection. I was just going to say that as far as the the bigger picture of how this plays out, one thing that I'm curious about is, we imagine, because that's typical of literature and everything else, if we're following these people, they must matter. By the nature of them being protagonists, we kind of fall into the, these are important people because they're the focus of the show and so on. One wonders, and again, that's the mystery and the delight, I think, as far as not knowing how much these people and what they do play a crucial role in setting up things to come, or, and this would kind of be bitter irony, if they're just another group of smuggling, people stealing crates, and they would be so marginalized that only the nobility of their act doesn't matter, but they're a forgotten dust note. Nobody ever remembers them, post the series. That's some sad fate in that, if that was the case. I would think that would be pretty dark for them to go down that path. I'm going to assume it's probably the former and not the latter. But
they have said it's going to go to some pretty dark places.
Yeah, that's true. And one wonders, again, without being too clever about it, there was, if they come up with some kind of device that says, when Empire Strikes Back, when such and such happens, oh, okay, that's great. If they do that in a way that seems natural and not forced, then I'm all for that. But the absence of, but they're not standing around, are they? No one's seeing Sabine as a 30-year-old, a crucial general, General Sabine in the rebellion or something like that. I mean, since you don't know, at least as far as we can tell, one wonders again what things they're planning in the series, that when it goes to episode 7, 8, 9, suddenly you'll see these characters as older, perhaps, or something like that, or my mother was so-and-so, and that kind of thing. I mean, Ezra himself, I think I've thought about this since day one. He being so young, he has force powers. So it would have been nice for him to pop up at some point, I think, and jump in and help out probably somewhere in 5 years. Because, again, the series it's 5 years before A New Hope, right?
It is.
Okay. So with that in mind, again, that's ominous to me. I mean, okay, if he has, he's yet again the story of, the kid in the boondocks that, unbeknownst to anyone, has this hidden force potential and all that stuff. Well, either is that going to be cruelly cut off at some point in the future, or is that something where he reemerges as a general statesman, in the episode 7 timeline or something like that? And then
sounds like he's speculating.
Yes.
No, I think you're right. There are going to be a lot of connections there. Corey, you were going to say something in our notes. We talked about maturity and the maturity of the crew and sort of how they gel together. And what did you want to bring up about that?
Yeah, you mentioned that Zeb and Ezra and Chopper are kind of three stooges this episode, and very mature as that little scene plays out. They're fixing some of the repairs, and they obviously make the mistake of not repairing the fuel cell or the fuel line or something like that. And it's I made the connection too. It's like Zeb, we get to meet him in the premiere episode, and he's telling everybody he's going to end Ezra. He's going to fix him good. He's going to get him, and now we are 5 episodes deep, and he's playing, grab ass with everybody. And I just think that you made the point too. You said, he was part of the honor guard of his people, and it just lowers his character his a little bit, I think, for me.
I agree with you. That's why I called him the Three Stooges earlier, because Zeb's a member of the honor guard, but yet he falls into these traps with Ezra. I guess that maybe Ezra's helping him get back in touch with his innocence,
maybe,
and what it was like before he saw this genocide on a gigantic scale for his people on Lasan. So that's what I'm hoping. That's how I'm trying to make peace with that, because I do find that act a little tedious, and for some people it may be their favorite part of the show, and I sound like a curmudgeon, and I'm okay. I'm okay with that.
I don't pitch in about that the tonal shifts of that sometimes, you could say, well, hey, it's an animated show on Disney.
Sure.
But that might be shortchanging it a little bit if you want to look at it with a critical eye. I think.
Well, there may be big picture, and I'm sure that this is part of their growth. But yeah, I know what you're saying. Go ahead, though. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, as far as a finishing point, it's a hard balance to hit. And just to go, back to New Hope for a second, Chewbacca is such a to me, going back to my youth. I always was fascinated with Chewbacca. I totally get the idea, I completely understand, on a subconscious level. At 4 years old when I first saw New Hope, I didn't, but that he's a big dog, based on Lucas's dog. The idea of that, though, that was interesting in New Hope is that when you have that scene where, Han says to R2-D2 and C-3PO, you better let the Wookiee win. Why, sir? It's not fair. Well, you could rip your arms off. I mean, Chewbacca was so cuddly, and yet you totally got that he could rip your arms out. That's a Wookiee. You had that somehow to hold both of those things was very difficult, but they played that great. And when he reaches out and hugs Luke and things like that, you could have those moments and have other moments where he would growl, and you could feel like, oh my God, he could go after me. That's hard, but they did it really well. And that's something with this character that I feel like they're struggling. I mean, either he's a guy that's Mr. Gruff, or he's, a goofy, immature 8-year-old. It's hard to, at this point, 5 episodes in, it's kind of hard to make that work, I think.
I think so too. And I feel like there's so much more we can talk about. We're already almost running towards the end of how much time we have, which is a shame, because I think the three of us could talk about, Star Wars in general for hours and hours. Before we move away from this, though, I do want to point on a few more little things. And Adam, your insight has been so great. You know, who doesn't love a high school English teacher? I certainly am a big fan.
My wife loves a high school English teacher.
Right.
There you go.
Hey, mine does too. Hey, how about that? Life is good. There's beautiful animation. The score is wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
We see the elements of horror. We touched on all of those things there. Is there really anything else that you guys would like to talk about? There's one thing I want to point out before we give our last minute thoughts, and damsels in distress, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Sabine and Hera are finally, at the end, and it looks pretty precarious. We're reaching the climax of it. We also see a lot from Hera. We see fear, a little bit of panic. I always was under the impression she was cool under pressure, and I still think that she is. She's a crack shot. She's a leader. She has these great strategies, and I love that when she calls the ghost, she's like, "Oh, hey guys, did you happen to check?" And then she unleashes on them and says, "Hey, you made a mistake. We had a real situation on our hands here." So she handles that really beautifully. So we get to see a vulnerable side of her that I didn't quite expect, that we didn't really see in A New Dawn. But still, I feel like this is more of a Sabine-focused episode. What I'm trying to say is these two, we've been waiting for a female-centered episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, the ghost comes in playing the throne room music from the end of A New Hope.
Right.
And the girls are rescued by the guys. Are they damsels in distress?
Yeah. Adam?
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I kind of felt that coming on because they're setting it up to be that way. And we all kind of knew that's the way it was going to go. That's the way the storyline was kind of played out. They have the issue. They're stuck at the planet. The other ship has to come pick them up, and it's all the guys helping out the girls. But I noticed one thing, that they shone the lights down on the planet there to ward off the creatures, and it didn't work. So
because it was artificial.
So
And when they realized it, yeah.
Yeah, when they realized. So I felt like, oh, well, they're not. I mean, they're there to pick them up. Obviously, they wouldn't leave them stranded.
No.
So they're teammates. But and the other thing too is, I felt like Hera and Sabine really held off the creatures well. I mean, thank goodness they had those giant barrels there. I mean, that was very, very nice,
right?
Convenient. But
I said some sarcasm, Corey.
The sarcasm meter went off.
Yes.
Well, can I say one thing that I thought about when I watched it? And this is I'm trying to be positive about this. I'm not saying in a rip-off way at all. To me, it was a powerful homage to Aliens, as in the second movie. Okay?
Oh, good. I love that.
And to me, first off, how much this was conscious and how much, James Cameron stopped by the cartoon set or something, I don't know. But you have faceless creatures that you don't have to feel bad that they're blowing up. I mean, these not Ewoks or anything like that. They're evil, nightmarish, as of right now, nameless creatures. There was the mother-daughter feeling of Ripley and Newt, that you kind of saw that kind of relationship going on with Hera and Sabine. Right. There was a moment of tenderness that was subtle and quick, but I really liked when Hera put Sabine at the top of the ship, like, getting her out of danger kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I hope I'm not remembering that wrong. I think it was Hera that put Sabine up on the ship.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Which was great. It's like, I'm the mother figure, I'm going to protect. And if you really want to continue this, the whole idea of it is that, they finally kind of, there's the waves. I was thinking about the scene in Aliens too, where it's like the guns were down to 30 rounds, to 20 rounds, to 10 rounds, the wave, 7th wave, 8th wave, we're almost out. And then as things were looking dark, there's kind of Bishop with the ship that comes in just when they think they got abandoned, they got swept up and they escape the planet before the planet blows up. There was a lot of deliberate things about that. And I'm not sure where that exactly went as far as a metaphor for anything, but it was interesting that they kind of painted that, again, you could look at that as far as, was Ripley a damsel in distress? I mean, she was kicking butt there. She was blowing up lots of aliens. In the end, it was a team effort and, all that kind of stuff. And Hera still rules her ship. But anyway, that was my thoughts about that. I just thought that was just interesting.
It's a good parallel. Good in-text
that
reference. Yeah, I don't think that they're damsels in distress. In fact, when this is going on, Sabine saves Ezra twice. She saves the guy who's trying to rescue her twice. And she says, "Look, kid, don't read too much into it. I'm just doing my thing." So she's got that real, that BA attitude about it, if you will.
Right.
So I like that. I do think that you can't see that scene and not think, oh, geez, the guy has to rescue the girl again. Here we go. I don't think there's. What's that?
I was going to. Can I make the quick note that we talked about Hera and getting to see her in action. Her and Kanan switch roles in this moment.
We don't even see Kanan.
We don't see him. I'm assuming he's flying the ship, so
he must be. We don't even hear witty banter.
What a great role reversal there, though. As far as him flying the ship and she's out blasting away and taking care of business. So I did like that aspect of it, and like you said, I agree with you guys. They're not damsels in distress. I think they can definitely handle themselves very easily.
And that, my friend Corey, is one of the reasons why this is not a sexist moment. They're not damsels in distress. The role reversal shows that being a hero isn't about gender. It's about a state of mind. It's about action. It's about caring about other people and putting other people's needs before your own. They're people that rescue one another. As you said, Adam, they are a team. Everyone has a purpose. Everyone has a role. Everyone has a function. So they collaborate together and they make it all work beautifully. So this is a very positive moment in Star Wars and storytelling, because the role reversal shows, I'm pretty sure that if A New Hope was filmed now, and of course this is just my own educated opinion, but I feel like Princess Leia wouldn't be sitting back on the moon of Yavin looking at the fight. She'd be probably in one of the X-Wing fighters. This is the moment where we see that it's not about gender. Heroes are heroes. And I think this is very strong.
And I can add real quick to that. I would say, and this goes all the way back to your gasoline thing that you were talking about earlier, Dan. I think there's a running metaphor throughout all the Star Wars series, really, about the limitations of technology and what happens when you're overly proud, perhaps, or overly dependent upon technology. If you think about just in this episode, for example, you have the idea of the ship fails because they were too, everything checked out fine. Instead of being the humans of eyeing it, they assume the technology checked out fine. Gasoline leaks, the ship fails. They use light, but it's artificial light because it's technology created light that didn't make and of course, as soon as the creatures realize that, they're ready to pounce again. Right. It was only the natural light that was powerful. And in the end, it wasn't so much a ship swooping in that saved the day. It was really that they saved their day. It was the humans involved, our heroes in our story. That's in the end the difference. And that's the thing that the Empire constantly doesn't get. They just don't get that. They think that if they can build the biggest weapon, if they have the best scout walker, the most armored stormtroopers, that's what's going to end up crushing all the people. But it's the human spirit that, despite the technology keeps failing, but it's the human spirit that keeps winning the day.
Oh, excellent thing to end that on. So before we give our overall grade, any last minute thoughts, real quickly, that we didn't talk about that any of you thought we should bring up?
Yeah, I bring up one point we talked about the idea of the fulcrum and the idea of how it plays a part in the story, but the character itself, I was really waiting to see this new character and see who this person is helping them out, and we didn't get to see them. And it sounded like a male voice on the disrupted audio there.
I think so.
But man, how cool would it be if it was Ahsoka? I know, blow your mind, right?
Well, you're ruining our speculation.
Oh, I know. Well, it's just fun once in a while.
The only thing that I want to throw in real quick, it's more of a general comment about the series, is that I have to say the Easter eggs of throwbacks in sometimes really strange and unexpected ways to previous incarnations and such, I delight in. When they said Kyber crystals, right? And they blew up the ship, and I'm thinking, are you really going to make a reference to Splinter in the Mind's Eye? That's blows my mind. And when I saw the Imperial troop transport a few episodes back, and I mean, that was one of my first vehicles that I bought, the Kenner action figure troop transport thing. I was over the moon. I mean, I don't know if, probably people our age and under may have got that. I don't know how many did. Right. I love the fact that they love Star Wars enough that even in ways that are subtle, that they make those little comments. So I was happy about that.
It's so cool. Yeah, I think there's a lot of fun things to sort of notice from that. And it's just fun to see all the connections that they have and just, you just don't know what's going to come next, and then when you see it, it just takes your breath away. Because this is it was an episode that I had a feeling you two would help me make a little bit of peace with, and you did. I'm not sure how much it's going to affect my overall grade, but I certainly appreciate both of your analysis and discussion, and I think listeners will too, because there's a lot going on here. The only thing that I really want to say that I didn't say very much is that I thought we were going to see a Sabine and Hera centered episode, and I think we did, but I still think it was more Sabine. I don't know what would make me find peace with this whole thing. Maybe just a Hera specific solo episode. I don't know. I do think it's intriguing that she changes depending on who she's around, because it shows more vulnerable sides of her. I mean, think about our relationships that we have with our wives, with our friends, with students, with coworkers, with family. There's just little different pieces of ourselves that are left depending on who we're interacting with. And I think that makes Hera more well-rounded. I still think we can expect a lot more from her. And I think that we will get that. So I guess I just need to be practicing more Jedi patience.
Patience, young one. Patience, yes.
So, guys, what is your overall grade for the episode?
You want me to go first?
Sure.
All right. Well, you're putting me on a limb because I'm curious how you're all going to grade. I might be being a little generous. I'm pulled into the spirit of talking so much about this episode and looking at some of the metaphors and such. I'm going to give it a solid B. And that's influenced also that Aliens is one of my favorite movies. So that homage maybe pulled me into the B category. So a solid B for me.
Very good, Corey.
You know, like I said before, it wasn't one of my favorite episodes. I always, when I go to grade, I always look back at all the other episodes and how I graded those and how it kind of goes with everything. And this kind of fell a little short for me. I give it a C+. It was a little weak, you know, and it's a low rating, but you know, I got C's in school too, and they passed, so it's all good. You know, it's
That's right.
It was a lot of fun. It was nice to see some of the other characters take light, and definitely through this discussion, it's making me see it in a whole different way. So, you know, who knows? Maybe ask me again next season, and we'll see what happens.
Interesting. Well, when Adam mentioned that he was going to be really generous, I thought I didn't know what he was going to say, but Adam, I have the same grade as you. I have it a B.
Okay.
And I enjoyed elements of it. I love the metaphors, and I like how you talked about the cinematography and the things with light always resonate with me. And I'm glad we got to see a lot more of Sabine, and we finally get to see some insights into her. I still think there's more that can be done with Hera, and there are times when I think, I wonder if they're confused about how to handle her. She's such a powerful, I mean, she's like a tour de force, what John Jackson Miller created with her and what Dave Filoni and the story group and really tracing everybody in PR Lucasfilm. They've created this larger-than-life female character that has the potential to be as strong or stronger than Ahsoka in the Star Wars universe. So I just think like there's more that needs to be done with her, and I don't really know what it is. And that's why I'm doing a podcast and I'm not working for Lucasfilm. So, and I completely trust in what they're doing. I just think that and hope that more is going to be done. And we've mentioned this before. It was easy to look at Clone Wars sometimes because you knew ultimately where these characters were going besides Rex and Ahsoka. And we don't know what's going to happen here. So, again, like you said, Corey, maybe a year from now or 5 years from now or 10 years from now, I have a much different outlook on this. This could very well be the seeds that lead to the spark of rebellion that we're hoping for.
And it's the fulcrum moment that you never realized that offside comment led to bigger things down the road.
Exactly. And in the spirit of putting the kibosh on speculation, I hope that fulcrum isn't Ahsoka, because I didn't expect that at all.
No, purely just not an idea in my own mind. And one more thing I'll put out there, you know, as this, you know, the ending credits rolled on this episode, one thought that crossed my mind, I don't know why I thought of this, but I thought if one team member is going to turn to the Empire, I thought it'd be Sabine, just from this episode.
I think they want you to sort of think that in the back of your mind.
So maybe more speculation. Who knows?
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. She seemed pretty burned by whatever happened, so unless she gets Stockholm Syndrome, I doubt it. But who knows? Who knows? It's going to be pretty cool to see. Kevin Hobbs was a writer on this. Adam, thank you so much. Before we let you go, we're going to have to ask you our 5 questions. So let's go ahead and get started with that.
Great.
What is your favorite Star Wars movie?
Star Wars, A New Hope, I saw it in a drive-in theater. I was 4 years old. I saw it like 3 nights in a row, and after every night, I got a new action figure. So that's a sentimental favorite. But really, in my heart of hearts, it's going to have to go with the standard. I'm going to have to say Empire Strikes Back.
Wow, it's like you and I were separated at birth.
Maybe we were. That would be fascinating, yes.
Yeah, I don't know if you got the chance to hear my earlier reflections on that, but I saw A New Hope in a drive-in for the first time, too.
Oh, see, there you go.
That's
and
cool.
Here's the funny thing, 10 seconds. The only reason I know it was 1978 when I saw the movie in a re-release is that I got action figures. In my mind, for a long time, I thought it was in 77, but that would have been impossible. They didn't have action figures until after Christmas. So there you go.
And that's how I made that same connection too. Yep, we're clones.
You guys are so old. No, I'm kidding.
No, we are.
No, it's all good.
I thought you were going to say smart. That's fine too.
That too, yes, exactly. So, Adam, next question is: who is your favorite Star Wars character?
I am going to go with Han Solo. I love the confidence, the cocky, yet underneath the softness. That whole smuggler with a heart of gold thing. In my best of days, I like to think that I have some Han Solo in me. As far as the ship, the Millennium Falcon is best buddies a Wookiee. I'm going to go with Han.
Very good. Have we? I don't know. You know what? I was thinking that we need to come up on our website and put every guest we've had in what they and just sort of keep track. That would be fun. But I digress.
Spreadsheet, yeah.
There you go, a spreadsheet. So, Adam, what is your favorite line of dialogue or film moment?
I love, in reading the making of The Empire Strikes Back, I was always intrigued when they came to the moment in the filming when they were talking about they couldn't make the Han going into carbonite scene work, and they wanted a romantic exchange. I think if there was 2 words ever in a movie, much less a Star Wars movie, that has such incredible weight of significance when Han says, "I know." I love that scene. There are times, even talking about it right now, I almost get chills because there, to sum up in 2 words an entire relationship, and what that meant when he said that's powerful. I give Harrison Ford credit for that. The arc that you see of Han Solo up to that moment, being 7 years old or so when I saw it in the theater and just, thinking, oh my God, he's about to die. So I'm going to go with I know.
Very cool. Definitely a classic line. So the next question is, if you collect, what is your favorite collectible that you own?
Let's see. I do have, it's not an original issue or anything. I have a reprint of the original Star Wars A New Hope movie, with the triptych of, Han, Leia, and then Luke coming at you in the middle. So that's a proud addition. I'm also going to go with a little side thing of my daughter is named Ayla. And yeah, so it was one of those things where, that name popped up and kind of floated around, but I have to know somewhere in my subconscious because she was born after episode 2 that I was thinking of Ayla Secura. I bought this little, figurine statuesque kind of thing of Ayla Secura, kind of an all fight mode, which now is part of my daughter's bedroom. So I'm going to have a sentimental favorite for that. I like to think that my daughter will be as strong as Ayla Secura. So there you go.
Very good. And last but not least, what particular messages or themes about the Star Wars saga resonate or speak to you?
I guess the top 2 would probably be the idea in the original trilogy, and again, I don't want to go on a rant about some of the midichlorian kind of arguments there, but in the original trilogy, I really love the idea that there was a beautiful simplicity and yet wonderful complexity, the holding that paradox of those 2 things about the idea of the Force, the spirituality of that. And that's probably influenced my spiritual beliefs as well, that, you can call it, 100 different things, but it's that force that binds us, that brings us together, that penetrates us. And that's a beautiful thing. I think I've always enjoyed that idea of the universe, there's something here that unites us, whatever that force may be. So the spirituality. And probably the second thing is that I'd like to think in a real mythological Joseph Campbell building way that, what always spoke to me about the trilogy is the idea of family and friends. The redeeming of, a father-son relationship that, obviously didn't start off well, to put it mildly, between Luke and Darth. But also the idea of friendships. When Luke makes that sacrifice, he's giving up his training, he's sacrificing his possible life, but it doesn't matter because it's his friends. His friends matter more than some kind of scripture, some kind of order that the Jedi must follow. It comes down to this: his friends are in danger; they're hurting. I have to help them. I can't just sit here and do nothing. I like to think at my best of times, I try to be that kind of friend and that kind of family person. But at the very least, it's something that I certainly aspire to, thanks to the Star Wars movie showing a very mythological, powerful way of demonstrating that.
Well, excellent. Wow, what an exclamation point to the 5 questions. Very, very well done, my friend. You certainly, we're very blessed at Coffee with Kenobi to have made connections with a lot of great people in fandom and in education. And it certainly was a pleasure, Adam, to have you on, to have a cup of coffee with us. Where can listeners get in touch with you if they want to ask you a question or just say hello?
Well, as an educator and a person that loves Twitter, you can definitely reach me there. So my Twitter handle is Watson Ed Tech. That's WATSONEDTECH. I also have a blog that talks about education technology. You can certainly reach and comment me there. And that is watsonedtech.blogspot.com, which also has further links to get to my district page and things like that. So I would love to get a reply or follow me, and I'll try to follow you back. I've certainly, thanks to Twitter and things like Star Wars in the Classroom, that's how I found you guys. So I'm very thankful for those opportunities, and I'm very thankful and blessed to share this cup of Star Wars with you guys today.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah,
very, very, very cool. We had a great time. We at the Stars Line, we'd love to shake your hand at Star Wars Celebration, of course, and
yes,
I'd love to have you on in the future just to talk about Star Wars or Rebels or anything in between.
Gotcha. Well, listen, I'm counting down to that trailer. Hopefully that'll be out for Christmas. I heard that's the rumor, so I'm having the same happy jitters that I had right for episode 1. So maybe we can have a trailer dissection wrap up or something afterwards.
Oh, I'm sure we're going to be all over it. Yeah.
Me and 15 of your other guests. I'm sure the lines are all
an all-nighter for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully that they'll have a lot of hosts and hostesses helping us in the cafe for that night.
There you go.
Well, kid, you pulled it off.
Was there ever any doubt?
Yes.
Chopper, get us out of here!
If you would like to respond to our question of the show, have a comment, or just want to say hello, send us an email or MP3 at feedback@coffeewithkenobi.com. Or if you have a specific question or comment for either of us individually, email us at danz@coffeewithkenobi.com or coryc@coffeewithkenobi.com, or visit us at coffeewithkenobi.com and click on the Contact Us section, or comment on one of the stories featured on the site. If you enjoy the show, please write a review in iTunes. You can also like the show on Facebook at facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi, as well as keep up to date on our Twitter feed at twitter.com/coffeewithkenobi. You can also find us on Tumblr at coffeewithkenobi.tumblr.com. If you enjoy the jazz music, download the album Eye to Eye by Steve Torok on iTunes.
This is Spectre 1. I need a lift.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here. Hold on.